I didn't think when I set out writing this episode I would go down such a rabbit hole, but here we are. Hi people, and hello my Chili con Carnage crew, it's Chili here, the man who produces Iron From My Eyes, and I'm doing a 5-minute review on Incubus' newest album, Morning View 23. At this point, you have to wonder if Waters has opened the floodgates to other musicians to dig up their past. I knew this would happen, I f***ing knew it, and now I worry. Incubus have become one of the most recent bands to re-record one of their most successful past albums for a new age, joining the ranks of other artists such as Sunny Day Real Estate, Diamond Head, or Roger Waters to revisit their past catalogue. The question that burns like an STD is of course perhaps the reason you might have that STD to begin with. Have they screwed over an old flame, or does it sound better than before? Now before I get going, I want to set some ground rules for this 5-minute review that is clearly longer than 5 minutes, because it contains a very long rant. I will start by talking about the album, and then I will go behind the veil with my thoughts before eventually circling around and giving my score and final thoughts. So let's begin. Incubus and Morning View is perhaps the most beautifully sounding era of the band that they have put to record, and I would argue that this album is their best record ahead of Make Yourself. Controversial opinion, but I have my reasons, and it mostly lies to this being my first Incubus record that I heard. When Incubus released this album, it was met with widespread acclaim and spawned massive hits like Wish You Were Here and Nice to Know You, but it's also a bit of a cursed album. Like many bands that existed in 2001, Incubus would have to alter their video clip for Wish You Were Here after the September 11 attacks. They were also scheduled to tour New York the week after the attacks and chose not to cancel these shows, being some of the first musicians to perform after these events, and I congratulate them for making that move. That took some balls to go ahead and do this. Now we move forward to 2021, and the band was due to celebrate this album with its 20th anniversary, but of course COVID happened and caused this massive delay, and hence why this record is called Morning View 23, which has a bit more of a ring to it if I'm being honest. So the album itself is more or less a semi-live re-recording of the original effort, with emphasis on how they have evolved and morphed over time. It's kind of like the album artwork, to be honest, and I'm hoping that that is not AI artwork in the background here, because I just kind of get the feeling that Incubus would be the band to go back out to that same spot and take a photo showing what has changed over time. Now this can be present on the music in small nuanced sections here and there, but largely with the production's variations, and this can mostly be heard with Brandon's vocals, which have changed over time as to be expected, and is probably the best part to start on. Brandon may have lost that youthfulness that is so ingrained in my brain, but not his ability to hit those notes. While there is a subtle hint of wear and tear over the years, he does seem to miss a few marks here and there, but it isn't exactly egregious, but for whatever reason they seem to have made his vocal tracks more prominent compared to the originals. For most of the tracks this isn't an issue, but on Nice to Know You during the chorus it's rather loud, and is at the forefront to what I at least consider a song that is largely supposed to be driven by that big guitar riff. It's very easy to hear the overlays on the vocals and kind of stands out like a sore thumb. The band also play a bit more loosely on certain tracks, such as with Circles, which can be heard during the extended outro. Also, various drum fills have been added to the song along with electronics, which I really enjoyed. It's like a fresh take on an old song and is one of the better reasons for this album actually having some meaning in its existence. After all, if this was a faithful one-for-one re-recording, then why would you bother listening to it? You need to add a bit of flair. There are certain other songs on here as well with different guitars used to record sections, adding a new tone, which is very prominent on Mexico, and a song I loved from the original. I think they did a great job on this one, as well as Echo, which seems to have added some real depth during that outro, as it slowed the pace down and transcended the sonic dream state with that brilliant guitar solo outro, replacing the old tune that just shuffled away. Now, many have asked, what is the point of re-recording this album? Why bother with these small differences that is essentially not going to be noticed, and of course overlooked by people who may not be fans? Now we are at the rant section, and here we go. This boils down to one simple answer: money. It's always about money. If you think that's selling out, then you are either not a full-time musician or are crazy to believe that you can just get by in life without it. Snoop Dogg recently surmised in an interview the reasons why we are seeing so many artists re-releasing their albums as anniversary records, and here is that clip.
If they were selling Michael Jackson record Thriller for $9.99, how much money do you really think he made off of each copy of Thriller? And this is the 80s, and that shit sold the most records ever. He made a lot of money, but what you think the record labels make better sense for them to just say, fuck it, I'm gonna remaster my shit, because after 7 years, in case you artists don't know, it's a 7-year clause where you can remaster your album and get the ownership back.
So it's obvious, if bands want to get money, they have to re-release their music 10 years after. And it's always 10 years because who's celebrating 7 years after an album? Now I want to bring your attention of the owner of the Morning View album, which can be seen right here as we zoom in, and it is Incubus, as opposed to the original of course, which was Epic Records, a division of Sony Records. It's been no secret that for decades record labels have made lots of money from their artists, and if you go back some 50 years, the music scene was vastly different to what it is now. Back in the 70s, a musician could easily make a living from album sales alone, and often the tour was optional, and usually there to promote the album, which of course helped sell more records. After all, back then we didn't have access to all the music in the world at our fingertips, and if you wanted to listen to something, you had to buy that record, or tape, or CD, with proceeds from this album sales being distributed to various tiers before the musicians would receive their cut, but usually as a small percentage to what a record would cost. And sure, these record labels bankrolled the band and put up the capital to risk this venture, so a reward is due, but these musicians also didn't have any other choice. This is extremely prevalent during the CD era during the 90s, because at that stage, record labels decided they wanted to go with CDs not because of audio clarity, but rather because it was a cheaper alternative.
The principal advantage to compact discs was that they were more convenient than LPs. Like you could put more music on them, you could carry them around easier, you could play them in the car. The manufacturing costs in bulk were dramatically lower than LPs, yet you could sell them for more at a higher retail price. So the profit margin on them for the record labels was astronomical.
The cost to produce a vinyl versus the cost to produce a CD is absolutely staggering. Think about how much a blank CD costs these days compared to the efforts made in vinyls. And it was around about this era that the record labels started to make a lot more money. It's an odd scenario because one can't survive without the other being in existence, but this uneasy balancing act was flipped on its head in the late 90s when Napster was founded and downloading music became a thing. Suddenly P2P websites were everywhere sending music for free, and the record execs panicked. Luckily for them, someone was going to act as the figurehead to tackle this issue, and Lars Ulrich of Metallica would sue the creators of this webpage. But stay with me here. Maybe Metallica were onto something. A musician does deserve the chance to make some money from their art. Metallica, with their influence and media spotlight, could have engaged in a discussion in such an issue. Now, while this was seen as a major line in the sand of musical revenue, it did draw other musicians to come out in support of or against this divisive action.
Where some people come from when they say, Napster is taking money away from me. Napster is hurting my lifestyle, or Napster is, I don't have food in my refrigerator because Napster's got my song all over the internet and no one will buy my demo tape. But you know what? When it's someone that sold 50 million records and they got 50 million fucking dollars and they're bitching about pennies, fuck you, man.
At least Lars had the balls to make the first move, even if it was handled in the wrong manner, with hindsight to guide us of course. Now we move to the last 15 years and we have seen the meteoric rise of streaming apps such as Spotify and Apple Music with their monthly subscription based services, which has been an endemic issue that has become more prevalent unto itself for all kinds of other services, but that's a different issue for maybe some other video. Now with people having access to Spotify, it allows them to discover entire catalogs of music whenever they want and however many times they want to for a small fee of $13.99 per month. For an idea on comparisons in value, a new CD from Sanity in the year 2000 would cost $29.99, and that was 25 years ago. Of course, this is a no-brainer that the masses ditch the physical media for the low fee of a CD every 2 months for unlimited music. You would have to be stupid to pass up such an opportunity, and now Spotify is a company that turned over $14.337 billion in 2023 alone. So let's figure this one out with some quick math. That's $1,194,750,000 a month in revenue. Spotify Premium costs $13.99 per month. So let's divide this by the number that is there, and we get roughly 85,400,285 subscribers per month. And these are just the ones who pay. For reference, Taylor Swift is believed to be worth $1.1 billion, and that's from wealth accrued over her career, not annual income. Spotify makes what Taylor Swift has made over her lifetime in a month. And I'm not including other apps in this figure, such as Pandora, Apple Music, or whichever service that you choose to use. Now, of course, this figure doesn't account for overheads such as salaries, upkeep of royalties, and the app, paying out artists, research and development, or rent for various properties of their offices around the world. But then again, how much of this can be written off in tax? Side note here, but some 15 years ago when Spotify was just starting up and they opened up their Sydney office, I was called in as an electrician to do some works for them to install some additional power points. And I just thought, holy crap, this is amazing. I get to go and work in their office. Let's see how it looks. That office, despite being very small, was set up like a mini Google office. It was decked out with a small relaxation room and contained an air hockey table, air boxes, bean bags, and a fridge with the best beers that you could drink. It was pretty cool and stood out for most of the other jobs that we usually had around about this time. Now back to the beast, and as physical media is on the decline, the artists are not getting their cut from this source of income. I am reminded of an article in which Deftones lead singer Chino Marino mentioned that him and his band would have to tour 3/4 of the year to make a living from the gigs that they perform, as the music scene had changed in such a way that they weren't earning money in the traditional sense. Now, this may sound like a woe is poor little old me story, but there is problems arising already here. The more a band tours, the more burnt out they can become. Frictions can arise within a group, causing them to disband as they don't have time to relax or even record a new album. Also, the issue of being pressured to be at your peak to perform as well is there, which can sometimes cause doctors to intervene and make musicians addicted to various drugs. This has been an age-old problem that goes as far back as the Beatles and Elvis, and also made the focal point for Pink Floyd's album The Wall. But then you have the other musicians who self-medicate, and you can see from a long list of them who have passed away while on tour just how much of a toll this industry takes on you. While Spotify takes its cut, they still have to pay out the record labels. And what income was supplemented in record sales is now replaced by a meager monthly toll fee designed to keep us subservient. Not high enough to be an issue, but low enough that the value is decentralized as the amount of fingers in the pie has increased, and everyone wants a slice before the ones who created it gets theirs. There is no shortage of bands out there that have showed their checks they've received from Spotify of small, insignificant figures not even worth the paper they were printed on. But now we land back on Incubus and the slippery slope we have started sliding down. If this venture is successful, and it will be, mark my words, after they tour to sold out venues for people seeking a nostalgia trip, then what's to stop them from revisiting Make Yourself to do the same thing, and eventually a band becomes a tribute band to themselves and becomes disinterested in recording new music because it's a financial risk and a burden that takes too long to put out to the public, as opposed to having a getaway for a week to play some songs that they have done for years and record these efforts for a new album re-release, which they cut out the middleman from. This is going to be an odd time in music with this social experiment underway, because if the old guard starts down this path and doesn't bother recording new material, then we could see a rather stagnant era for music, and will highlight the long underlying issue that is, what role does streaming services have in this day and age moving forward? This is a question that has remained mostly unanswered and unopposed for the better part of a decade, but don't despair at the apathetic lack of my answer to this question, because this could also be the catalyst for change. In the previous interview with Snoop Dogg, he mentioned that the stylistic change within the scene is more akin to something like the NFT market to a various degree. But I don't concur with what Snoop Dogg has to say, and that is mostly due to the recent collapse in the NFT market. But it does beckon an idea. An idea that something has to change. Now all we need is someone from the old guard to spearhead this movement, and then it will become something. Otherwise, it will be a slow change brought in by new blood. I know a few musicians out there who are reluctant to use these streaming apps due to these issues, and if enough new acts gain prominence and withhold their services from the tech giants, staying on the virtual picket line if you will, then we might just see changes being implemented. Think of the recent writers' strike due to Netflix royalties as the perfect parallel for this issue. The only thing that is lacking is a union force, but musicians are able to band together for the cause, and I'm sure sometime in the future we might see something similar happen. More musicians will re-release old material, new music won't be made due to lead times and costs, and there will be a stagnation that causes change. One way or another, it is going to happen. As for the music on this album, it's difficult to differentiate the original to the new in some sections, which feels like a stranger at first playthrough, but you know the moves. The original album is so ingrained in my head after the years and years of constant playthroughs that this feels at times, well, odd. But in other aspects, it is also refreshing. It's improved in certain aspects, and in others hasn't changed much. It's not as drastic of a change like Diamond Head's re-recording of the White Album, and thankfully it's nothing like Roger Waters' travesty that was the Dark Side of the Moon Redux. It's just fine, and my nerves after hearing about this album months ago are now settled. Overall, I will give this album a score of 11 million chilies on the spicy scale, with my favourite songs being Circles, Echoes, Mexico, Wish You Were Here, and Aqueous Transmissions. This album was always going to score high if the band didn't stray too far off the beaten path, and it didn't do so too drastically. What changes that are prominent were a welcome one, but they are few and far between. Was it necessary? Well, if you want to help support Incubus but don't want to buy their records, this is as close as you can get to doing so. It's like the entry-level membership at some local club. I never thought this review would lead me to ponder the inner workings of Spotify and the issues surrounding artist royalties in this new tech age, but maybe this will make you think about the issue a bit, as I have done so over the last few years. Go support some up and coming bands, go buy their CDs or vinyls, go get their merch, go to their shows as well, because this will help them become big groups. And then one day you can say, I saw them at a small venue with 5 people, and after the show the band had drinks with me until 2 AM. For all the small bands out there, don't give up. Reach out to me, we might even be able to tee up something on my channel for an interview. Keep on moving forward and keep writing, because adversity can sometimes be the best source to write killer tunes. And thank you very much for watching this 5-minute review that is now blowing out into, 18-minute rant. Comment below on your thoughts on this matter or the album. If you've enjoyed this content, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to us, and stay notified for future music related content, because it keeps our manager happy at the end of the day. We are also on Discord, Instagram, Facebook, and all those other social platforms if you want to check us out. As always, people, you have a great day and stay spicy.